Hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. Well, as we promised in our last video, we're back quickly with the follow-up video, which is with us reassembling the Dynamo for the Ferguson. Now, I will put links to the previous videos on this on the Dynamo. First one is where we basically tested it, ran through the testing procedure. We found that it wasn't really it was generating a small amount of voltage, but nowhere near enough. And so we stripped it, and what we found, or what I found, was that the brushes were actually caught in the carriers and they weren't closing down on the commutator properly. And I do believe that that is what was causing it to not produce the required voltage. Everything else tested absolutely fine. The field coils were tested absolutely fine. And the commutator also, all the windings on the armature tested absolutely fine. So I'm pretty confident that sorting out those brushes is what will fix this dynamo. But what we found was that the field coils, the wrapping around the field coils was very perished, and as soon as you tried to clean it, that wrapping just started coming away and coming apart. Now, I must say that most people at that point would probably just replace the dynamo. They are available. Anglo Agri Parts have them. I'll put a link, or at least give you the part number down in the description. But wrapping field coils, in fact, winding field coils is something that I've always had a bit of an interest in. But I'm not in a position to do any field coil winding, but I thought let's at least go ahead and rewrap them. And so again, there's a separate video on that, and I'll put another link to that here as well, so you can watch that if you're interested. But the materials involved is not something that your average person would have on hand. It's something that you have to buy especially, and frankly, I don't think it's cost effective to do that yourself. With the price of a replacement dynamo, which is as good as original, that's probably the route that most people would take. But as I said, a bit of an interest for me and something that I wanted to do, and so I did film the process, and that video is available to watch. But anyway, so the time has now finally come for us to reassemble the dynamo. Obviously in the intervening period, it's been almost a year, as we've decided to sell our previous property, buy a new property, go through the whole process of moving house, packing everything away, unpacking it again, sorting everything out. And frankly, there was a fair amount of work required on this workshop that we're in now to get to the point where we could actually restart filming. But again, as per my last video, we're now here, we're back, we're ready, and this is the first video since we restarted. So welcome, hope that you enjoy it. Sorry, as I was going to say there, it's been a long time since I dismantled the dynamo, and so it's going to take a little bit of remembering and working out exactly how it goes back together again, in particular the wiring inside the dynamo. But we'll work it out, we'll puzzle that through together. If I get it wrong, I'm sure you'll tell me, but anyway, I'm sure I'll also work it out. And you know, we'll back up and we'll start again if we need to. But I don't think it's that difficult. There's only 2 wires, right? But it's well, there's 3 wires in truth. But anyway, let's get on with it. Right now, I've got all the parts on the bench except for the body. The body of the dynamo is out in the barn next door, just drying. I've been painting that, so I stripped it. Stripped all the paint off, got rid of there was a little bit of rust on one side, got rid of all of that, took it basically back to bare metal. I did that on the lathe, put it in the lathe and just spun it up, not at a huge speed, I think it was about 600 revs per minute, with first some 40 grit sandpaper and then some 80 grit sandpaper, and that cleaned it up beautifully. Anyway, so that's had a coat of red oxide primer. And then I've decided to paint mine a high gloss black, which I know is maybe not 100% original, but it's what I've decided to do. I think it looks smart. I'm going to do exactly the same with the starter motor. So the Dynamo and the starter motor will be black, and of course pretty much the rest of the tractor is grey, so it just provides a little bit of contrast. So you'll have the predominantly grey, small amount of chrome around the steering wheel, gear lever, knob, that sort of thing, and then the black on the dynamo and the starter motor. That's what I've decided to do. Don't shoot me. That's yeah, I think that looks smart, so that's what we're going to go for. Anyway, yeah, so let's crack on. I will bring you back as soon as that the paint is finished drying, and we'll get cracking with the reassembly. Okay, so I think we've got all the bits that we need here. Obviously in the center you can see we've got the armature. We've given that a little bit of a clean up on the commutator. I'll quickly show you what we did there. As you can see, I've already done it, but I will just run through it so you can see what we did. We've got the two bolts. We've got the back carriage where the brushes go, and you've got the phosphor bronze bush inside there. Again, I've not replaced that because it feels absolutely fine to me, and there's absolutely no play in it. Similarly, I've not replaced the bearing in the front carriage because that also doesn't feel like there's any issues with it whatsoever. We've got the two field coils as we've wrapped them, as you saw in one of the previous videos, and of course the pole shoes, field coil poles, I guess they're called. I bought or I found a set of carbon brushes for it, new ones. Obviously you can see this is obviously someone's new old stock or old new stock, whatever they call it. It's been around, you can see these have been around a while, but at the end of the day it's just carbon, and shouldn't be an issue with it being a bit aged. In this bag I've got all the little bits and pieces, nuts, bolts, screws, that sort of thing. And then the outer shell, you can see, or the case, I've as I mentioned, completely stripped that back and resprayed it a nice gloss black. Feels lovely, and I think that that's going to set off the engine, the look of the engine, quite well. So yeah, so we're pretty much ready to make a start on reassembling this. So let me first show you what we do with the armature, and then we'll get into the actual reassembly. So here over at the vase, you can see I've got the front body in the vase very lightly. Remember that the metal that they use on these end caps is not fantastically strong. It's some kind of alloy, and I mean, I've heard it described as they take all the junk from all the other manufacturing processes, throw it in a pot, and then they cast these. So they're not very strong, and many people will attest to actually breaking these just by trying to disassemble the dynamo. So again, just lightly in the vase. I've got aluminium jaws on this vase, so it was not going to hurt anything. But essentially that allows you then to spin the armature freely on its bearing. You don't need to go mad. You don't want to go, number one, you don't want to take a lot of material off a commutator. You really just want to shine it up. Get rid of any carbon on the top and any serious scratches. Now you will notice scratches in this rotation, and that's perfectly normal. That comes from the from the brushes. Any impurities in the carbon will actually slightly score the commutator, but it doesn't do it any harm whatsoever. I would be more concerned if I saw a scratch in this direction. But again, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It will just wear the brush out a little bit quicker. But anyway, point being, take a little bit of emery cloth I've got. You can use sandpaper if that's all you've got. This is 240 grit. You don't want to go any rougher than that. You could go lighter if you wanted, but that's the lightest one that I've got in an emery cloth. And you just want to lightly hold it. Don't press it, but lightly put pressure on it like that. See how I've got it between my fingers like that, and just spin the armature in there. Move it backwards and forwards a little bit just to make sure you don't get any terrible grooves, and eventually you'll find that will come up nice and polished, and that's what you're looking for. Okay, I did very similar on the body of the armature. Now actually that makes no difference whatsoever. For me, there was a little bit of varnish on the outside, which, you know, I just wanted to take off just to make it look neater, but you don't actually need to do that. That will do its job through a layer of dirt, even if it exists. Right, now the other thing you need to do is on the commutator is to take a small screwdriver. This is just a flat blade screwdriver, and it happens to be roughly the thickness of these slots. Okay, now what you want to do is put it in there. And what I did, I marked 2 of these poles. Where is it now? There. So I marked those 2 poles, so I know that's where I started. And you basically just want to drag that screwdriver through like that. And all you're trying to do is to get rid of any loose carbon and or any burrs from your polishing of the commutator surface. You just want to remove those burrs so that you don't land up with any shorts between sectors or segments. And it's as simple as that. Now there is actually a specification for the level of undercut, in other words the depth of these slots. And if you look at the manual, if you're interested, you can actually do that. You can undercut it to a certain depth. There's as I say, very precise measurement for that. But I'm not going to bother with that. Looking at these, they seem absolutely fine. I can see that I'm dragging on the insulation. That's what I'm feeling and seeing underneath the screwdriver. And so I'm just lightly cleaning those slots, and eventually you'll come back to where you started. And there we are, we're back at our mark where we started. Now, one thing to be careful of, when you're dragging this through, try not to let your screwdriver score this surface here at the back, because of course that's what runs inside your phosphor bronze bush. So do be cautious of that. If you feel you want to polish that up a little bit, you can, but again I would probably go with a slightly lighter emery cloth on that one, as in a finer emery cloth. So I'm not going to do it now, but really again you just want to polish that. You don't want to take any actual material off. I may actually I've got some scouring pad, and I might actually use that on that just quickly, just to tidy that up. And look, that's about as much as you need to do. Remember, in the previous video we tested all of these windings and we found that they were all testing to the same resistance, and that's ultimately what you need, or what you're looking for. When you are cleaning this, be careful not to damage any of the insulation on these windings. Obviously they are, each winding itself is insulated individually, and then they also do dip them in a resin to protect them, and you don't want to take that off. You want to keep that nice. Right, so that's it. So that we can now remove that, and we can get started with the reassembly. Okay, now I believe the first thing we need to do is to reattach these 2 wires. Basically these were twisted together and soldered, and again if you watch the disassembly video you'll remember that I struggled to actually get those disassembled, i.e. unsoldered. I don't think my soldering iron was getting hot enough, so I've got my other one, which I'm much more familiar with, and I'm hoping that that's going to be more successful. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically twist these wires together. Now they weren't tightly twisted together, they were just twisted around each other, and so I don't want to overdo it for fear, number one, of breaking them, and number two, that if we need to disassemble them again, that we will be able to. So I think that will do. It's just sort of 4 twists, and hopefully the soldering iron is warmed up now. Let's have a quick look. No, not yet. In fact, that's not heating at all. Probably because I haven't switched it on. Give me a minute. Okay. Sorry, I'm still working out the electrics in this room, so I forgot that I needed to switch it on in 2 places, not only in one. Anyway, yeah, soldering iron is now nice and warm. We're getting good melting going on there. So we'll just heat these wires up a little bit. There we go. There we go. I believe that will do. I'll switch that off. Okay, so that was the easy bit. Now the next job really is to get the shoes in, the pole shoes, and fit these into the body. Now, a couple of things on the body. There is a rivet that needs to go through. Don't know if you can see all this. Yeah, I think you can just see it. These 2 wires basically join together. There's a rivet that goes through there, and that needs to earth onto the body inside here. And then this one is insulated from the body, obviously, by the plastic that it's mounted in. So really important to make sure that you've take any paint that's on the inside of the body around that rivet hole. Just take that off, so that will make a good connection to the body. For a rivet, I don't have the original. What I've done, I've found a pop rivet that will fit, and I've removed the shaft. Well, I'm going to remove the shaft. I'm going to use that to go through there, and then manually knurl it over or rivet it over on the other side. In theory, you could use a pop rivet and pop it in there and then use your pop rivet gun, but my pop rivet gun won't get in here, so I'm going to have to do it manually. If you've got a small one, then it should work. So right, let me get the camera set up properly, and we will make a start on that. Okay, hopefully this is going to work, i.e. that you're going to be able to see. But what I've done, obviously I've got the camera off to one side so that I can get in here as well. I've got the hole for the rivet is on this side, so this side closest to me. And what we need to do is get these poles, or these field coils rather, into the body. Now the let's see if you can see this. Not quite. So this side, the one with the plastic, this is your field winding connector, is what it's designated. That needs to go on the side closest to the rivet hole, because the lead on that one is shorter than the lead on the other one. This one, when these are closed, i.e. in a circle like that, then obviously this one's going to reach around to there. But anyway, best thing to do is probably just to do it, and then you can see what I mean. Okay, right, let's go again. Right, so we've got our poles pushed into our coils. We, as I said, this one with the shorter lead needs to go closest to the hole, and we're going to gently drop those in, and then we can line up the hole and get the first one mounted. That's the first one. I'm going to spin it around, do the other one. Now you may recall, well, again when we disassembled this, that these screws were extremely tight. Now obviously that's reasonably important that they are tight, because they need to, you want to make sure that they don't come loose, because obviously that would destroy your armature. But at the same time, bear in mind that they are squeezing the field coils as well, so you need to use your best judgment on essentially how tight to make those. Right, the next thing that we can do is insert this. I think we can insert this insulator, which basically, from memory, goes around. How does it go now? I've got to try and remember this. I think it goes this way. In fact, probably I should have put it in before I tightened the, yeah. So that actually needs to go behind the field coil. So let's just loosen these off again. Now obviously this thing's job is to prevent that wire that we just soldered from arcing out on the body of the dynamo. Now I'm trying to work out the best way of doing this so that it protects the whole cable. There we go. So I think you push it down like that, and then you can lift this wire up and put it just inside that V shape, and that should keep it away from the body. Let's try and lift that up a bit. There we go. So the whole wire is now insulated from the body, and the joint is tucked away safely inside that sort of V groove there. Right, so the next job then is to sort out these two. Now as I said, this one needs to come around, and interestingly it's going to be on that side. So we might need to reshape this lug slightly. Okay, I have cleaned both sides of the lug because I wasn't sure which one was actually going to work, but essentially that needs to go on against the body. Let's get the rivet in. So the rivet goes through the plastic first, then through this lug for the other field winding, and then through the body of the dynamo. If I can get it in. It is quite a tight fit. There we go. And of course that needs to stand up straight for when we put the end cover on. So there we go, that's how it needs to be positioned. Now what we need to do is hold that in place, and I might need my other pliers for that, whilst we open up the rivet on this side. I'm going to use a pair of water pump pliers because they give you the best reach. Let's make sure. Don't know if this is going to work. I need to find a different way of holding that, but yeah, let me figure that out, and then I'll come back. Okay, let's move this more into the center. So I figured out that actually with the shaft out of the rivet, I can now actually get my rivet gun in there, which is, and only just, which is, but that's a bonus. So then I can push the shaft all the way in, hopefully. Might need to give it a little tap. There we go. And now, making sure that that is standing up straight, let's start tightening. It seems to have broken off the shaft already. And now can we get these out? Okay, well, it hasn't tightened it as much as I wanted it to, so I'm going to have to hammer it anyway. So what we'll do is we get this wire out of the way so we don't risk damaging that. And maybe I should have used another pop rivet, because I think that one, with me pulling the shaft out, I think I probably weakened it. Okay, plan B. There we go. Still not as tight as I would like it. It's not pulling it into the body, which is what we need. So I think what I want to do is try and push that rivet further in. That's better. Very good. So I think that's got it now. Don't know. Unfortunately, you can't see it down there with the camera, but essentially, what you want to make sure is that this lug, the earth, essentially the earth lug, is actually touching and making good contact with the body. Otherwise, of course, you're not going to have continuity there. I think I've managed to get that done, and you can see that's the outside of the rivet. Unfortunately, I damaged the paint a little bit there, but we can touch that up. And that pillar is standing relatively straight. So we can retighten these field poles now. Make sure that our insulator hasn't moved, which in fact it has. Just like that. And we'll just retighten these. Okay, there we go. And that, I believe, is the body done. We will repaint that, and we'll paint these screws as well. But for the most part, that is the body done. So really happy with that. Now in terms of this alignment, obviously that field winding goes through there. And then this lug connects to the brushes. And not sure how that brush gets connected, but we'll work that out once. Yeah, interesting. Oh, that one's connected to earth. Okay, so that one's getting it. Okay, so that one's insulated and is coming out of that lug, and the other one is it's basically connected to earth. Oh, there you go. Fine, I understand now. But essentially that fits like that. That one comes through there. So, and there's a little pin, or I call it a pipi, nipple, I suppose, that sits in the body there, and that connects with this, or goes into that hole on that side. So you know that you've got the alignment right. So I think let's move on to the brushes and get those inserted. So the first thing we need, we've got 2 springs and 2 small screws, or they're little bolts really. There we go. And they go, oh well, I'm going to get them cleaned up, and then I'll come back and we'll show you how that all goes back together. Okay, so we just tidied those up a little bit, and we can get our brushes out now. So first thing I want to do is make sure that they fit inside these carriers, which they do, so that's good. So first thing we want to do is get that in there. Now what you want to do is make sure that that brush can move freely in and out. If it doesn't, then you need to clean the inside of this carriage more, essentially. But essentially what happens is that goes on there, this spring then pushes on the back of it, and sits on this pillar. Let me get that out of the way. So that spring is mounted on that pillar to the side like that, and is designed to push, or to push that brush in. What I like to do is to put the wire on the top so it doesn't get fouled by the spring, or foul the spring itself, and then without getting in the way too much, now you see that spring is not going to be pushing on there, so we need to give that a bit more tension. So let me work that out. Let's just pull this out again. So I'm guessing one needs to wind it up a bit. I don't know if it'll go all the way around again. Doesn't look like it will, so let's just see. If we put it like that, so turn it 180 degrees and then bring it round like that, so it sits inside and is pushing into that aperture. Now of course that's going to make it a bit more difficult to get the brush in, but that's fine, right? You want this to be right. So what we'll do is try and, I need 2 hands here, 3 hands here. Let's see if I can do it like this. There we go, just holding the spring out the way, pop the brush in, there we go, and then release the spring. Now the spring's going to try and push the brush all the way out, of course, which is fine, but basically we now need to connect this lug, electrical lug, to this pillar on the other side. So just like that, essentially. And this is a little, I don't know, it's a little quarter spanner. Not familiar with the very small spanner size. I don't know if that's a 1/4 inch. I suppose it probably is. Now what we want to do is make sure that that cable is not going to get fouled by the spring, which it is. So I think I might turn that around. Yeah, I think I'm going to turn it around so the wire is coming out the top of the screw as well. That way it's got no chance of getting stuck behind the spring. Come on. So what we'll do is we'll turn that over, put it like that, so that the wire is at the top of the lug. A bit fiddly, and I'm not sure how much of this you can actually see, but hopefully it's making sense. Okay, before we tighten that, I just want to make sure that everything is right. Okay. So basically when it travels backwards and forwards, the spring is at the bottom and the wire is at the top, so they're not going to interfere with each other. So that's exactly what we're looking for, basically. Now, the trick for reassembly, because of course these brushes are pushing out, they're not going to go over the commutator easily. So the trick is to take a very thin piece of wire around and pull them back, fasten them off, then you put the end cap on and you then pull those wires out. I'll show you. So, as I was saying, a nice thin piece of wire, and what we're going to do is cut it, make a U shape, pop it through there, like that, and you use it to pull the brush in, like that, and fold it over the body, and then just attach it somewhere so that it doesn't come loose, which it just has. Ah, the wire's broke. Right, let's try that again. This is old wire that I'm reusing, which is why it maybe isn't as good as new wire, but anyway. So we push the brush back and fold that over. Hopefully that will stay just like that until we're ready to pull it out. So look, I'm going to do the other side quickly, there's no point in me filming that as well, and then I'll come back. So there you go, both of them held back now with a thin piece of wire which we can just pull out when we're ready. I've tightened both the electrical bolts, the electrical connections, so they're all nice and tight now. So the next job is to insert the armature into the body, and then we'll get this back on. So for now we'll just move that so that it's out of the way, and we'll get started on the armature. Okay, I think the battery died there. We were trying to get the armature in and it wasn't quite going, and it seems to be knocking up against the pole shoes, the field pole shoes. So what I'm doing, I'm just loosening these so that they can move if they need to, and we can tighten these back up again when we get there. So let's try that again. Now hopefully now they will be able to move as they need to. No. Oh no, I see what the problem is. So these pole shoes actually have a chamfer on one side, and this one is the wrong way around. So we will just extract it. If you can see that there's a bit of a chamfer on this edge, and so that needs to go down so that it helps guard the armature in when you're reassembling. Don't know if that's gonna, well, hopefully that's gonna help. Seems like a small difference, but let's see. So the other way to go would be to tighten these as tight as we possibly can to get those poles to pull in as much as possible. I suspect what's happening here is that my rewinding of the coils, the field coils, that wrapping is essentially too thick, and we've lost some clearance there now, and that, I mean, that would be a disaster basically, if that is the problem, because that would mean that, well, you'd have to redo it with a much thinner material, which I wasn't able to find a thinner one, to be honest, so I'm not sure that that's going to be practical. Let me try and tighten these as much as I possibly can, and I'll come back. Well, this is I think where I give up, unfortunately. So I've now tightened those as tight as I possibly can. I can now get it to go about halfway in. You can see there. But clearly those poles, those shoes are not sitting straight, and it won't go in the rest of the way, which is a real issue. I mean, this thing needs to be able to turn freely inside there, right? So squeezing it in is not an option. It should slide in relatively easily, but obviously that's not happening. You can see now it's stuck. So yeah, that's a bit of a disaster. I guess one option would be to take these field coils to an armature winder and get them to redo it with a lot thinner material, which, as I say, I've looked and I couldn't find anything thinner than the one I used. I guess the other option would be to try to re-wrap them. So if you watched our wrapping video, we wrapped them kind of half overlapping all the way around. I guess you could try so that it's not half, so it's basically a single layer the whole way around. To me that would seem insufficient, because you inevitably will have gaps, and that obviously defeats the point of having the wrapping in the first place. What else? I suppose another option might be to try and thin these shoes a little bit. You could possibly take them to an engineering firm and get them to turn them down. I think that would be that would be the worst option. Another option might be to take a little bit off this armature, but I wouldn't want to do that either. And of course the final option is to go to Anglo Agri-Parts and buy a new dynamo, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing, because this one clearly now is not going to work. That said, so I'm going to leave the video here. I'm going to have a little think, might do some research, see if there's any other way that I can try and squeeze these further. I'm kind of nervous about over squeezing them because obviously there's windings in there, and I'm kind of nervous about damaging them. Another option might be to take them out and swap the poles. Maybe they are different. And in fact, if I remember, I did mark one. In fact, yes, I marked that one, and that is meant to line up with that, and I do have it the other way around. So maybe I'll try that. In the end, I decided that it didn't matter which way around they went, but maybe it will make a difference. So I might try that. I might try that off camera and see if that makes any difference. If it does, I'll obviously come back. But yeah, I guess I'm going to put this down as a fail, I'm afraid. I wouldn't recommend anybody try and do this themselves in terms of rewrapping field coils. Not least of all because it looks like it makes them too thick. But also just because it's kind of impractical. Difficult to find the materials, expensive to buy. And they're the kind of materials that you probably won't use again, so seems like a little bit of a waste. As I say, you can buy replacement dynamos, and that's probably what we're going to end up doing. So yeah, let's leave it there for now. As I say, if I manage to solve the problem, if I manage to find a solution, I will come back. But other than that, you know, on this channel we show you the good things and the bad things. This is definitely a fail, and one of the many, but hopefully it's been interesting. At the very least, you know, maybe you've seen a little bit about how to dismantle, how to reassemble. I mean, obviously once that was in, the only other thing then to be cautious of is that there's a fiber washer that sits on the back here, so that needs to go on before you put your end cap on. Just to show you the you can see those bushes, those brushes are still going to have to be pulled in a little bit to get over the armature, but you know, that wouldn't be difficult to do. You pull them a little bit more, get them over the armature, and then once that's in, you pull those wires out and they will reconnect with the commutator. And that's it. I mean, that would have been the end of the job, but clearly we have to be able to get the armature in here, and it has to be able to turn freely. So we've got a long ways to go. Anyway, enough of my waffling. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have a good week, and next time we're going to be mounting the exhaust and inlet manifold. So we're going to be replacing that on the engine. That's about ready to go, so that'll be the next video. And as I say, if I find a solution to this, I'll come back. Alright everybody, have a great week. See you on the next video. Cheers for now.